quorum established. This meeting on July 27th, 2026 is now open. Is there a motion to excuse Connell?
So moved.
Is there a second? Moved by Mishler, seconded by Beers to approve the absence of Christine Connell. Madam Secretary, roll call please.
Clark,
Yes.
Beers,
Yes.
Mishler,
Yes.
Padilla, yes. Benedict.
Yes, motion carries. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the next item of approval is the agenda.
So moved. Support.
Moved by Mishler, supported by Clark to approve the agenda as is. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Next item of approval is the approval of the June minutes.
So moved.
Support.
Moved by Mishler, supported by Beers to approve the June minutes as is. Any discussion? Madam Secretary, roll call please.
Clark,
Yes.
Beers,
Yes.
Mishler,
Yes.
Padilla, yes. Benedict.
Yes. Motion carries. Public comments. These are agenda and non-agenda items. Public comments are limited to 4 minutes. Persons addressing the board should state their name and address and direct their comments to the president. Are there any public comments?
My public comment comes with a handout, guys. Pass that along. So I just wanted to touch on a few implementation items that came up recently, specifically during our employee evaluations, so that we can make sure we're setting ourselves up for success moving forward. First on that list is ADA compliance. I worked through the process of adding alt text to Facebook and Instagram posts, but I'm also still not confident that I fully understand all of the current and upcoming web accessibility requirements. And I appreciate that ADA training is now being made available to all department managers, and I think that's an important first step. However, I think it's also important to recognize that understanding the accessibility requirements and knowing how to implement them on our specific platforms are two separate things. In general, the ADA training will help us understand the requirements, but we may also need platform-specific training for the tools that we actually use, such as our website, newsletter, and social media platforms. This will help ensure that staff not only understand the requirements, but know how to implement them correctly and consistently. Sorry, I forget to breathe when I talk.
You're doing great.
As far as the monthly manager reports, I really support and think it's a great idea to have clear reporting. And I think that these kinds of reports can be incredibly valuable. My goal is simply to make sure that we have clear standards and the necessary tools again, so that the information we provide is accurate, consistent, and meaningful. Before these reports can become a part of our regular workflow, I think we need some additional clarification, so everyone is collecting and reporting information in the same way. First, it would be helpful to establish operational definitions for each requested metric. Some of the requested terms could reasonably be interpreted in multiple ways. For example, if I place an order for 250 books, those books typically don't arrive all at once, and they aren't invoiced until they're shipped. So they may come in several shipments over a period of weeks to even months, depending on the books. So when we're reporting materials that were purchased, does that refer to the date the order was placed, when materials were invoiced, when they were received, or when they were paid for? Those different interpretations can produce different numbers, even if everyone is reporting in good faith. The same question applies to processed materials. Processing is a multi-department workflow. Materials are cataloged, but then they also need to be labeled, covered, taped, and otherwise prepared before they're ready for patrons. So at what point should a material be considered processed for reporting purposes? Having clear definitions will help ensure that everyone's measuring the same thing in the same way. So it would also be helpful to understand the purpose of each requested metric. Knowing how the information is going to be used helps determine the appropriate reporting methodology. For example, if a metric is intended to align with monthly accounting records, it may need to be reported differently than if its main purpose is to measure collection development activity or department workload. So understanding these intended uses will help ensure the information being collected actually supports that purpose. I also think it would be helpful to clarify the scope of reporting. Children's, teens, and adult services each have separate materials and programming budgets, but the library also has shared budget lines such as technology and general library expenses. So some of these purchases are made for the benefit of the entire library rather than a single department. For example, I recently ordered a television and a wireless microphone that'll be used in multiple departments. So how would I be expected or wanted to provide that information? Similarly, some of the purchasing responsibilities are assigned to managers who were not included in the discussion of monthly reports. For example, Michelle orders office supplies, large print materials, DVDs, and audiobooks, and Cassie orders ebooks. It would be helpful to clarify whether those purchases are intended to be included, and if so, how they should be reported so the information is complete and consistent. Related to that, I think it'd be helpful to have a written reporting guideline or a completed example showing how each section should be completed. This would provide a standardized methodology for all managers and help ensure the reports are consistent and comparable from month to month. If different managers interpret the requested metrics differently, we're gonna end up comparing data that wasn't collected the same way, which makes it difficult to draw meaningful conclusions. One additional consideration is that we're currently transitioning to a new integrated library system, and some of the requested information may not be readily available until we completed training for the reports function. If some of these metrics depend on reports from the new system, it may be helpful to establish an implementation timeline that takes that transition into account. Lastly, I wanted to mention one workflow issue that may become more important with these reports. Currently, our Amazon purchases are made through a library Amazon account that is connected to a personal Amazon account. This has worked well, and this isn't a concern about trust. However, because department managers don't have direct access to purchase history or receipts, it makes it more difficult to retrieve information needed for this monthly reporting. I think it would benefit the library to have a dedicated library Amazon account that managers can access as needed. That would allow managers to place approved orders directly, access purchase history and receipts when preparing reports, and ensure that purchasing records remain with the library rather than being tied to an individual employee's personal account. Whether the library chooses to create a dedicated library Amazon account or continue using the current workflow, managers will need reliable access to purchase history and receipts in order to complete the requested reports efficiently and consistently. If the current workflow remains in place, that would also require an ongoing workflow change so that receipts are routinely shared with the appropriate managers. And then lastly, just as far as department feedback, for the department feedback section of monthly reports, the examples that were provided covered several different types of information, including facility concerns and budget recommendations. And I'd appreciate just a little more guidance on what it is you're looking for. For example, should we include operational concerns, workflow suggestions, facility issues, budget recommendations, technology needs, policy questions, or something else, or all of that? Just having some clear expectations will help us all provide feedback that's consistent, relevant, and useful. So, yeah.
Okay.
And the handout I gave you is just like a lot of the questions that I brought up in bullet format, because I don't expect you to remember everything I said.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Breathe, Jessica.
Yeah. Catch your breath.
Any other public comments?
As a public,
I think we have one from the
after
audience.
team.
Perfect.
Tina Reset, Adult Services Manager, Howard Township Library. Just to kind of build on what Jessica said, I also have a handout.
One of those.
the same as what's in
Well,
board
it's
packet?
sort of the same, except that, I added some information, but I just wanna point out that I've been compiling this spreadsheet for years, at least back to 2024. Michelle typically takes the numbers in here that are just in the columns, not in the bottom with the additional information. But she prepares that and then she puts that like in your board packet somehow. But this is broken down so you can see, you know, each program, each audience, and how many people and expenses. If there are some blanks, that means that that information hasn't been provided yet. And then I added the number of events per age group on the bottom, which had not previously been in the spreadsheet, and then monthly costs per age group. So I can share this with you if you want on a monthly basis. On the computer screen, it probably would be a lot easier to read it. So just to let, I mean, we've been doing that for a long time. On the ADA compliance update, I appreciate that the board is being proactive about this. However, since we're in the middle of transitioning to the new integrated library system with TLN, I feel that that is a much higher priority for us right now. There are 6 of us that are going for additional training tomorrow, and we also have TLN coming out here on Friday for additional training. We have a lot to do before the end of August. So I was thinking that maybe it would be helpful. I know that we now have some training that we can access, but maybe we could set a couple of internal deadlines for the ADA training so that, you know, like, okay, you know, by October or something like that. I'm just throwing these off the top of my head, that, you know, you've completed training and that you've started using it. I have started using it a little bit on the website because I had experience with that with a former program that we had here. So that's my thoughts on that. Feedback, I know Greg is gonna talk about the roof later in the meeting, and also, I've mentioned before that I think that the library should be cleaned on a more regular basis. And I'm kind of just a little wondering, why are you asking for this, you know, like feedback now? So those were my comments about the information that we were told that was going to be required or requested of all the department managers.
Writing club number should be 17. It's met 3 times.
This is on a monthly basis.
Oh, is it? Okay.
So, I don't,
Okay.
yeah.
What month is this? Oh,
This is July.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any more public comments?
All right, I have a, public comment, from a community member that I'm going to read now. This was a email received from April Brandon, and I'm gonna read it verbatim. It says, "Hi Greg, I just wanted to take this opportunity to recognize Jessica Riddle. I hope that you're willing to read this aloud at the next library board meeting. Due to her research on her time off, the American Legion now has hope of being able to remain open after licensing issues have them recently considering permanent closure due to exorbitant expenses. Because of reports made by undisclosed parties to licensing agencies, the American Legion has been informed that they need to obtain certain licensure. These were several $1,000s a year. Ms. Riddle may have found a way for them to obtain the licenses necessary for several $100s a year, saving them thousands. The American Legion commander is looking into this with the American Legion attorney and went from hopeless to hopeful. Thank you to Ms. Riddle and all of your library staff for their exceptional service and research skills, as always. The library and its employees are truly an asset to the community. April Brandon.
Okay, thank you.
May I say something? This has to do with music. I don't think that says that in there. Does it say that in there?
No, it only
It has to
cites
do with
certain
music
licenses.
license.
Yeah.
Someone filed a complaint with BMI, I guess that's what it's called.
Mhm.
And it was supposed to be, apparently we were supposed to have a license to play any kind of music, whether it be groups that come in or whether we play it on a hotspot or
Streaming.
anything.
Service.
That was the complaint. We don't know who filed the complaint. But it not only affects us, this is a broad-based complaint that could affect all kinds of organizations. And I was thinking about the library when I saw on here somewhere that we do jazz concerts and that kind of stuff. You might wanna see if we have protection. I hate to bring that up, but in the face of those kind of attacks on public institutions, I think we should protect ourselves.
The public comment said the American Legion was facing closure.
It said,
No,
it says they were considering permanent closure due to exorbitant expenses
Because of the,
because of the
Complaint.
licensing costs.
oh, I see, okay.
I do see a hand.
I just want to put everyone at ease and tell you everything I found out for the Legion would also be applicable for here. So if it is a thing, I already found the answers and we should be fine, but I will talk to Greg, we should probably look into it.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
About 2 years ago, we looked at this in depth. And the fees for library were about $500. But, we found out that if the village or township purchases a license, it grandfathers in all entities within the community. And I passed that information on to the township and I've heard crickets since then.
That could be so beneficial to the community,
Mhm.
and I think there are probably many people who would support that decision.
For like karaoke nights, and to address Mr. Mishler, performers that come pay their own licensing fees. We don't have to cover their licensing fees if they're playing music.
And being the library for live music, we have an exemption because we don't charge anybody any money for it. So there's a nonprofit exemption.
Thank you, Jessica.
Okay,
neither does the Legion charge any money.
I know, so that was the loophole that works for them for live bands, but I figured out the other solution for streaming for them as well, because that's a different monster.
Okay.
are there any other public comments?
I do think this is a good idea that we, and I commend Jessica, now that I'm thinking about it. I've been saying all along, you're getting a lot of people in town who are screaming and yelling and hollering and doing all kinds of things, but I don't hear very many people with a plan. And this, for this particular thing, which affects not only the two veterans things, it affects the Moose, it affects a number of different organizations in town. This is a good to have options, because it was pretty bleak. Cause you were looking at $1,700 a year, and then there were multiple licenses, which added up to about $2,000 or $3,000 or $4,000 a year, which doesn't really sound prohibitive, but when you think about the fact that a fundraiser that a VFW American Legion might raise 500 or 1,000. It would take you 4 or 5 fundraisers just to cover that base. So I mention all of that because it's really nice to hear somebody with a plan, because there are so few plans out there by anybody.
Thank you, Joe. Okay, we move on to financial. These are the financial statements to approve. First,
Can I make a comment?
yes,
Okay. We get a lot of paper. And when I started printing this off, and I just kept printing and printing and printing, I'm thinking, what? And then I realized that, okay, one thing on a half page, one thing on a half page, quarter page, and I'm thinking to myself, why haven't we condensed all of these down? And this would have reduced this packet by a minimum of probably 8 to 10 pages. And then I'm gonna make one other comment, and I know this will probably get me in some difficulty, but these minutes can be condensed. You don't have to have all this spacing. And it's a technical thing, but looking at it in terms of saving paper and saving whatever, I think it's important we should look at that sort of thing. You don't need all the spacing, and I don't know, this is the first time I've seen all these bills on separate pages, and while it made it easier to read, it was a lot of paper. And I think we could save a lot of paper.
I go digital.
You're already digital, you send it out.
Yeah.
But I'm saying, if there's a way, now I don't know the difficulty of combining these on pages, but there has to be a way to do this, to make this easier and save a little bit, save 20 or 30 cents on paper, but it has to be easier, because I was just surprised my printer just kept reading, and I'm like, what?
May I reply?
yes.
I agree, Mr. Mishler, and this is a huge packet, and we are in the process of, as our staff members have described, defining what we want to see every month. So
Okay.
this first time you saw almost absolutely everything. You won't see this month's paper again,
Okay.
unless you specifically request, hey, show me the Amazon bill for $12.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
I can actually read it without glasses.
So we will have, on the agenda, we will have a finance subcommittee update, so this is certainly something that we can also discuss under that item as well. I do appreciate the feedback. Is there any other feedback in terms of, on that regard for this? Yes,
So going forward, is this, account statement the goal of what we should be receiving in lieu of all of those receipts?
that would be my question for the board.
Okay, the accounts, because I feel like this is reasonable to look at where we have, in this instance, it says see receipt. But for instance, there was $39.90 spent on a Super Mario Brothers movie. And I can clearly see the date, the vendor, Amazon, the amount. It says the account was for video, and then the description would, just state, movie circulation, or, children's movie. It could even just say the title, where it could easily just put some description in there, versus receiving all of the receipts. Which I agree with Joe, it is quite a lot of paper. And then if there were questions, then we can go back and pull that specific receipt. To kind of cut down on the amount of printing that is being done, since we're all getting copies of the same thing.
And I would also momentarily just table my question to the finance subcommittee about what information they possibly would like to receive when we get to that part of the agenda, if that is information that you would like to receive. Is there any other feedback on the way the statements were sent in for this month? Okay. We will, move for financial statements to approve. We will start with the Choice One April statement and the ramp statement. Because I believe last time there was feedback that these should be individual motions.
I move we do the first one. Individually.
Okay, so moved by Mishler, supported by Beers, to approve the Choice One statement and the ramp statement. Any discussion? Madam Secretary, roll call please.
Clark,
Yes.
Beers.
Yes.
Mishler,
Yes.
Padilla, yes. Benedict?
Yes. Motion carries. Next item is invoices for approval.
So moved.
I second.
Moved by Mishler, seconded by Beers to approve the invoices. Any discussion? Madam Secretary, roll call please.
Clark,
Yes.
Beers,
Yes.
Mishler,
Yes.
Padilla, yes. Benedict?
Yes. Motion carries. The next one is event statistics. So this is the manager report. This is under this topic because of the budgeting. So this was one of the summaries we had during public comment that was brought up. It is slightly different, but it looks like it is the same information. My question to the board, is this something that you would continue to like to see with your packet? And then I would also defer this question to be tabled for the finance subcommittee, if this is something that you specifically would like. But at the moment, is this something that the board would like to see in their monthly board packet?
I move we put it in the monthly board packet.
I second.
Moved by Mishler, supported by Beers, to add the event statistic report as is to the monthly board packet. Madam Secretary, roll call please.
Clark,
Yes.
Beers,
Yes.
Mishler,
Yes.
Padilla, yes. Benedict?
Yes, motion carries. Next item is the quarter one budget focus and goals. So this is just to provide any discussion. Seems like we had a little bit of discussion before this, but if there's any other discussion that you would like to add, in terms of the budget one focus and goals, anything that you see that you would like to highlight, anything that you would like to change. I have noted the feedback. I'm sure Director Hayes has also noted the feedback. Is there anything else you'd like to add? Okay. Well, I just wanted to say thank you to the staff. Change is always something that I think is difficult. It's always a challenge, and I really appreciate the feedback. I always appreciate the feedback. And I've taken a lot of notes, and I look forward to making this process efficient, streamlined, and informative, but certainly not something to negatively impact the staff. Ideally, what it would be is everything that you're already doing, such as this event statistic log, and being able to, provide the board with that information, should the board be so moved to have that. So with that, we move on to the president report and the director report. President report, okay. The only thing that I had for the president report is just a verbal summary of some of the things that I have highlighted for quarter one that we would hope to, sort of look into, so just further review into grant opportunities. We are starting, as you can see, the very last item under new business is the personnel packet, so looking at this personnel packet, which has not been updated since I believe it was 2020. And then, last but not least, closing out the quarter with the quarter one review and setting those quarter two, budget focus and goals. And then further down the pipeline, some of the things that I would like to, see if the board is inclined to, review would be mileage reimbursement procedures. That was mentioned during the budget. I did not see any mileage reimbursement, and perhaps there was none, for this past month, so that's possible. But just making sure that we are, providing our staff the appropriate mileage reimbursement, and as that was built into the budget. Looking into in-kind hours, just again ensuring that, payroll is under control. We're looking at, evaluation rubrics, so not specific evaluations, as I believe that's confidential information. So I'm looking at blank evaluation rubrics, just seeing how the staff is being evaluated and ensuring that the evaluation rubric that they're being evaluated by is, current and reflects what our current library, looks like. Also looking into things like, the contingency budget, which I do have, a sheet here, which we'll share here in just a minute. I'm looking at a newsletter vendor change, again, with the ADA compliance, digital compliance coming down, in the next year and some change, just maybe looking at some other ways that we could possibly streamline that so that is efficient for staff to follow that compliance, but also so that it's not burdensome on them. And then last but not least, extended holiday hours. So are we looking at, the hours upcoming for the holiday to ensure that staff is able to travel and to spend time with their families while also balancing, library operating hours and things to consider like that. So those are the things that I'm looking at, and outside of that, that concludes my present report. Director Hayes?
Thank you, Madam President. Just summarize what I wrote here. Some reading
Can I ask a question before we
Oh,
get
sorry.
into this?
Yeah.
All right. These letters have been thrown around for the last, I don't know how many meetings, ADA compliant, ADA compliant. When it comes to the internet and stuff, what are you talking about? Because I have no clue.
Our president can answer it better probably from a school standpoint, but from a library standpoint, we are required by 2028 that all electronic communication be in a format that can be utilized by people with visual or audio deficiencies.
Okay.
If you wanna look it up, it's called Title II, Digital Accessibility, Rules.
I'm not against it, I hear these things being thrown all over the place and no one ever really says anything about it.
For example, something that you might see, if you're a Facebook user, is if there's a picture with a post, there might be a picture of the library and the staff standing in front of the library, and the post is about, a librarian had a special birthday or something, whatever the post is about. The post will be written, but then there will also be a statement, image description, staff standing in front of Holly Township Library from left to right, including these people. And that is for the purpose of somebody using a device that would read the text out loud, telling them what the visual image is of.
I got it.
So it helps with all of the accessibility for those
Alright.
individuals.
Director Hayes?
Thank you. Thank those ladies back there and Debbie. The ice cream social was wonderful. Had over 76 attendees. We are hosting a coffee with the candidate event on August 15th. It's my intention to invite those candidates that will appear on the November ballot. We are hosting a separate event for library board candidates. And having said that, you folks know I do not post on Facebook as a person or a library director usually. So when we have that event, there will be no politics involved. No, it'll be all politics, but there'll be no, I will have the policy of non-involvement.
What time?
11 a.m., I believe. The same day that the Grinnell son of the Grinnell piano family will be here for a presentation. TLN transition. All of the staff went last week down to Novi for preliminary training. All of the managers and one support person are going down tomorrow for material training. August 24th, we begin the catalog transition. We need to shut down Mel until the early part of September to be able to do that. August 28th, we are closed when we migrate our catalog to the new PLN shared catalog. The 30th, we're gonna do testing all day here. And on September 1st, we go live. They are sending at least one staff person from TLN to assist us. We've received our payments from Rose and Groveland. The only other thing we got scheduled to come in until December are the penal fines. Transition to new payroll company has been frustrating, as I let the president know. Everything is in place for this week's paychecks to be direct deposited. We're evaluating the elimination of the food pantry. Not that that's something that we really want to do, but we've seen a marked increase in rodents getting into the food. And Jessica tells me that most produce we've been receiving is spoiled. So we're looking at options, but that may come down the road. We certainly don't want to do it before the village. I have, and I'll talk about this in a second, some contingency plans. The election is a week from tomorrow. And Tina tells me we will have yard signs tomorrow that say support your library.
You're supposed to be here today.
In terms of that, thank you.
I do have one.
Okay.
This is yours.
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
Pass on everything I have here. Should millage pass, we'll continue with normal operations. I'll also begin preparations for the district library subcommittee to create a plan for placing district questions on the 2028 ballot. If the August 26th millage fails, ask the board president to convene a special meeting to approve language for the November ballot. The deadline is August 14th by 4 p.m. If we're asking for reduced millage, because we thought that's why it didn't pass, if it doesn't pass. Sorry. If we're asking for reduced millage, we need to look at what is gonna happen with that reduced millage. At one point, if we go for a 1.0 mil, excuse me, I would suggest the following reluctantly. Cap all staff hours at 32 hours per week, eliminate cleaning services, reduce the library hours, ask the financial subcommittee to recommend eliminating any budget items deemed not essential. Should the November millage fail, we'll pretty much be a volunteer library at that point. We do not have funding to last very long after that. The couple options that we have at that point petition the village to establish a city library, if they are willing to go for that, or petition the township to levy a special assessment district for library. That's my voice at the end. And I believe,
Can I ask you a question?
yes, sir.
We charge Groveland and Rose $2 a person. Can we do that to Holly Township?
You already paid millage.
The millage fails. Can we do that? Can we say, since the millage failed, here will be the new assessment for the library?
I would run it by our lawyer, but I believe that would be possible.
And I'm not talking about $2 a person.
One thing for the finance committee to consider is our agreement with Rose and Grove will expire next year, so it's time for a renegotiate. Building grounds, I have information on roof leak under new business, and I approved an invoice for replacement of a furnace fan directly behind Mr. Mishler. That's why it's so kind of sticky in here right now. That will be not to exceed $1,800. And we're working on obtaining estimates for the main interior door, which does not close without pressure applied. And the issue is hinges, which are no longer manufactured anymore, and we're trying to find somebody that will work on that for us. We also, because Jessica put her head through it, bought a new TV. I like throwing you under the bus at this point, Jessica. And lastly, I'd like to thank Jessica and Tina for coming and expressing their opinion. As you know, my management style, I like my staff to be able to feel comfortable to come to the board and talk about what they think are the important issues of the library. Thank you very much, Madam President.
Okay. Thank you. I do want to, read the other numbers that are under should the November millage, fails for those who are, watching this video and who do not have this handout in front of them. So the second part does say, should the November millage fail, the possibilities would include eliminating 5 staff positions, eliminating healthcare coverage, capping hours for remaining staff at 15 hours per week, reducing operating hours to 2.5 days per week, and petitioning the village to establish a city library, which you did mention, which I think provides the question to my mind is what would happen to the board if there is a city library that is established? Because it's my understanding that that would be a new charter, which would then mean that this board would be dissolved.
Correct. I think that is a fair point. I would ask, another consideration on that. If we have zero money, does the board have to move to close the library and dissolve it?
You're making an assumption here on number 5, petition the village to establish a city library. That might be really hard for the village to do since they're not a city.
I could have used a better term there, village
I mean,
library.
Because as far as I know, they've been talking about it, but not really taking any action.
I think this just lists all of the potential possibilities, but I do see what you mean.
Would we need a motion to tentatively ask for a special meeting?
For what?
Well, the election's a week from tomorrow. Yeah, sorry. We have a deadline to approve new millage language on August 14th. Even if we're going for the same millage language, you guys have to sit as a group and approve it.
If the board would be so moved, we can do a motion, if there is a motion, and we could have a contingent special meeting, so that if it does fail, then we can go ahead and meet prior to this deadline of August 14th. Would that be,
So moved.
Second.
moved by Mishler, seconded by Beers, to approve a contingent special meeting should the August millage fail? Any discussion? Should we set a contingent time and date? Is there any further discussion about what time and date would work?
If we're okay with meeting on Mondays, there's August the 3rd and August the 10th. And then go before the 14th.
Well, yeah, but August the 3rd is before the election.
Okay.
So it'd be August 10th.
Okay. August 10th. Okay. Does 7 PM still work for everyone?
I add that to my motion.
Is there a second to that amended motion?
I'll second.
Moved by Mishler, seconded by Beers for the amended motion of setting a contingent special meeting should the August millage fail for August 10th at 7 PM here at the library. Any further discussion? Madam Secretary, roll call please.
Clark,
Yes.
Beers,
Yes.
Mishler,
Yes.
Padilla. Yes. Benedict.
Yes. Motion carries. We move to old business. The first item is the second part of the director evaluation. As you may recall, there was a situation, and so we had a motion to complete the director's report, or the director's evaluation, this month, as we were not able to due to the events that took place at last month's meeting. So we are here to complete that portion. I open the floor to whoever would like to start with this topic.
Well, I finished mine.
Thank you, Abby. Joe?
I didn't go looking up any professional sorts of things. I personally like the way the library's being run. I don't have a problem with that. Budget, okay, I don't know if that's all on the director, or that's partially on somebody else, or partially on other elements, but I like the way things are being done. I like his attitude, I like his friendliness. He seems to be open to all kinds of ideas and information, and I like all of that. One area I think could be strengthened is publicity. I've been saying that for the last 4 years, but that's just, those would be two areas, budget and publicity. But I don't consider those the whole being of what a director